was laid off 4 months after my son was born and was a stay-at-home dad for almost a year and a half before he started his own business. So,
wow. Yeah.
What do you want to know about it?
So we're seeing more and more in the news media and on TV about stay-at-home dads. Are there different provisions that couples should put in place if the dad is staying at home versus the mom, either in the prenup, the postnup, or the divorce settlement?
Well, I think role defining in a marriage is a really important piece to before you get married and then when you have children, because I think your roles are constantly changing. I mean, we're in an economy in which people are losing jobs, recession. I think that if typically you have two working parents, whereas traditionally roles were different 20, 30, 40 years ago. Nowadays, some men are opting to assume more of the parenting role on the day-to-day basis, and whether it's going to the supermarket, taking the children to school. I at least know two people right now, two men who were recently laid off, and their wives are working full-time jobs, and they have multiple children under the age of 10, and while they're trying to find employment, they have assumed more of a caregiver role. So I think it's very much a real part of the way society is kind of changing and evolving. I think sometimes you may still have more women cooking, but nonetheless, I think it's just more of defining roles early on so that there isn't resentment from the working spouse to the spouse that gets to watch Oprah or Ellen, or or get to go to the children's sports activities, or I think there's really just making sure that both parties are okay with how you are defining the roles, and ensuring that you don't feel the resentment of either A, not being there for your children, or feeling in some ways from the stay-at-home dad perspective, not having the self-esteem of being that wage earner or the breadwinner or the supporter and provider. If both parties are willing to engage and take kind of a less traditional role and keep communicating about that and making sure that they are on the same page, I don't think it's necessarily problematic. I think it's how you want to define it.
Are you seeing a difference in the divorce settlements when the mom stays at home versus when the dad is the stay-at-home parent? Or are they about the same?
I don't think that there is really a discriminatory, gender discrimination in how the courts are viewing divorce. There are many, many factors that go into an analysis of how to divide up property division, and alimony is a secondary remedy to equitable distribution in Pennsylvania. So in cases in which there is a stay-at-home dad or a father or a stay-at-home husband and a working mother or wife, I think the analysis is still the same. You're looking at the age of the parties. Are they healthy? Just because dad is elected to stay home doesn't mean that he maybe didn't go, maybe he did go to college, maybe he had a good job, and maybe he can re-enter the workforce at some point. And I think the courts are looking at all of those factors and trying to weigh what the right result is.
Got it. Are there any tips that you would give to women who are now taking on the more traditionally masculine role in the marriage, things that they should know or haven't been told to them when it comes to divorce when their husband stays at home?
Have a prenup. Obviously, it really depends. I think that I don't really draw a distinction between genders. I represent both men and women in both roles. And I think that you have to make informed decisions, understand what your rights are under the law in the event of divorce. Obviously, I don't think anyone gets married wanting to get a divorce, but prenup is one way to protect themselves in that regard. And the other way is once your kids get a little bit older, maybe there's going to be an agreement between the couple that stay-at-home dad is going to resume work. Or maybe that stay-at-home dad is going to continue to educate and stay up to speed in whatever his career was, or volunteer, or have some involvement in the workforce so that there isn't kind of this dependency financially by the stay-at-home dad in the event of divorce. Does that answer your question?
We see in a lot of celebrity couples lately where the more wealthy and more powerful woman marries somebody who maybe has less money or less power. Is that shifting the way that family law is done?
I'm not sure I understand the question. I don't understand. Sorry.
That's okay. So the question was more about, in these sort of high-profile celebrity relationships, are there things that people should learn from, say, a Jennifer Aniston, or not really?
Well, I mean, Jennifer Aniston's proposal was conditioned on there being a prenuptial agreement. So obviously, she's a smart businesswoman. She's been successful in business. I think her goal is to be successful in marriage, and I think there's this management of one's expectations from the outset, recognizing that there's an imbalance in the assets from the outset, and that the ultimate effect that can have later on in the unfortunate event of divorce is really smart. I think that's a great way to approach protecting yourself, but also wanting to accept a proposal and be a bride-to-be.
Jessica Simpson is an interesting case because we know that she didn't have a prenup with her first marriage, and now she has a baby with somebody else, a long-term relationship. In that sort of case, where maybe you're in your second marriage and instead of getting married, you're going to live together and co-parent and be together in a committed relationship, what can you do to protect yourself and to make sure you're doing what's right and what's best for you?
Well, there's something called a cohabitation agreement, which falls outside of the divorce code in family law. It falls under civil contract law. And I think a lot of people who just want to live together and decide to have a baby enter in what's called a cohabitation agreement, meaning they determine how they'll manage their finances, how they will deal with their monthly responsibilities financially. And when there's a child involved, obviously you can't contract away child support obligations, but the child support laws still are in effect in terms of in the event they were to separate or no longer cohabitate. That raises issues of both child support and child custody.
Good. Do you need a separate parenting agreement, or does everything go into the cohabitation agreement?
Well, I don't think that you need a separate parenting agreement, and if you're living under the same roof, you're both sharing custody of this child and working together. Cohabitation agreements are designed more to handle the financial and economic component of it. The only time where a parenting plan or a custody agreement would come into play would be if you're no longer residing together. if you go split